Hey guys, this will be video 9 for the how to design build a uh, 58 Explorer replica and paint it sapphire blue and install shark fin mother of pearl inlays and turn it into a rock and roll guitar. Really happy with it. I need to cover some ground here because this video is going to be primarily for the client. Uh, Well, it'll be for everyone, but Art will understand why I'm doing this video and why I did all this additional work that was not originally included. Originally, I sold this guitar body, or I had this guitar body and this neck and just the neck lower and all this stuff available for sale. In other words, like a do-it-yourself kit. You know, you buy the neck if you want and build your own body, or buy the body and build your own neck, or bolt a Kramer neck on it or a Fender neck on it or something like that, or whatever you find. But the client, he emailed me first and he was like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this body and this neck, the lower, what would you charge to build a fretboard? And then he started giving me all these specifications and whatnot. And I knew it was going to be a really complex job, which I've already covered this. But I explained to him, I said, look, I'll give you a really fair deal on everything I can. And I gave him some quotes and stuff. But it was basically just to build the fretboard and attach the fretboard to the lower and then attach the lower to the body. And then I had originally planned on just clear coating the neck and then leaving the body white because it was primered white lacquer. But he mentioned, no, I want to go blue. And the more I thought about it, it's like, oh man, this would be a great project. So I basically, for the most part, just did all the paintwork for no charge. And I had never intended on building this up as a finished guitar for the client. And I think he's was never expecting that. But the deeper I got into it, as I was building the project, I kept thinking about, oh crap, there were a lot of things that I should have addressed on the front end to kind of ask him what he wanted me to do or not do and things like that. Now, before I forget, the body definitely did include the anchors being installed in the body, but it did not include an ABR1 bridge, and obviously it did not include a tailpiece or the studs, but it did include the ground wire being installed as you install the bottom, the treble side anchor there. You drill the hole first and you strip the wire and you install this and then you press this anchor in, and then voila, you've got a ground wire. And also, before I forget, another thing is I always epoxy my anchors in place. Even if I'm doing a Floyd Rose and there's anchors up here, they get epoxied in place. Whether this body is poplar, ash, maple, mahogany, whatever your, alder, whatever your wood is, you need to epoxy your anchors in. And that was the primary problem with a lot of the early Kramers, that they were great out of the gate. You would tune them up and everything would be fine, but then those anchors would start tilting under pressure. They would start tilting, in this direction, and therefore and then once you tilt a little bit that way, now if you do a dive bomb, there's looseness there, therefore there's no tuning stability. So if you want a guitar that'll stay in tune, make certain that you epoxy your anchors in place, whether it be a hardtail or a Floyd Rose. But anyway, with this guitar, and really the only reason I did this and didn't talk to the client about it was because I'm actually building this guitar right here finished, and I had bought the Kluson Tulip USA tuners for this guitar, nickel, which is what's on this guitar right now temporarily. And then obviously the nickel bridge that's on this guitar right now will get transferred over to this guitar, and I'll finish this guitar. So it was kind of cool. These were coming together at the same time. So I knew, well, I got to do this work, like fretwork. As I did this fretwork here, after I finished that fretwork, I jumped over, and the remaining frets I did all the fretwork here. except you can see I ran short one fret. So, but I got the others in. And so as I was preparing to build that guitar right there, excuse me, I knew that I'll have those parts laying on the table. The anchors are already in place. It's just a matter of screwing these in by hand and then running some temporary screws down in that have a pan head on them. And therefore, this is a real cool way to start doing your setup, because you can reach up here with a Phillips head screwdriver and adjust these as far as height to do your initial assessment. So, long story short, this guitar, this project, as sold, does not include the ABR1 bridge, does not include the tailpiece, does not include the bridge, doesn't include strings, doesn't include tuners. As far as I'm pretty certain, I don't think I ever included the nut either, and especially did not include the nut machined to fit the guitar. But I did machine this nut and fit it to this guitar because this guitar is identical to that one. In the event Art tells me, no, I was planning on going with a brass bridge or a titanium, nut, or a titanium, or et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, so all that, but the reason I'm doing this video for you, Art, is if you wanted me to include all this stuff as it is set up, I can, and I will, and it would be obviously basically just for my cost, and I wouldn't really expect to, be compensated for doing all of the initial setup, because I wanted to make certain that this guitar came out of the gate, and even if I ship it as just a body with a neck, finished, just a body and a neck like this right here, all Art would have to do is order his Kluson tuners, KDE 6B nickel, or G if it was gold, or whatever he decided to go with, and then all he's got to do is put them on. Very simple process, and then obviously anybody could, just install this stuff down here. Well, for the most part, because here are the little studs that get sent with the bridge. Sometimes I have to slow myself down and realize a lot of people have never even seen this stuff, but it's not rocket science at all. And if Art said, no, I was going to go gold, or I was going to go with a Tone Pros or something made in Germany or something, or a Gato or something like that, then all I'd have to say is well, then all you'll have to do is whatever studs you need, you'll just install those little studs at, well, let me give you a height. If you were to go with an ABR1 bridge and you didn't go with mine, then this ought to be a 14.5 to 15 max. Yeah, it's just under 15 millimeter. So what is that? That's precise. That is exactly what we want for a phenomenal feeling playing guitar. About 15 millimeter from the top of the guitar body to the top of an ABR1 Kluson. If it is a Tone Pros or something else, it might be a little bit fatter, a little bit taller, but or where I'm going is the saddles might be a different height coming out of the bridge, so therefore it might affect that. But I did achieve my 17 millimeter right here at the EADG at the G string. So I'm 17 millimeter right there at the G string. And what does it play like? It plays like a phenomenal jazz guitar. I've got the action like pretty low. It's with this nut, it's pretty darn low. And set it up 2 nights ago after I had finished all the fretwork, and just wanted it to settle in because I wanted to adjust the truss rod and make certain that I got this thing like master level finished. However, if it got shipped to someone who didn't know what the hell they were doing, it would be pretty hard to screw it up, because I'll even be able to tell them, okay, this is where your truss rod needs to be set to. Let me go ahead and talk about this if I can, because I do have back tension. I do have back tension on this neck a little bit because I got this neck pretty much flat. It's like shredder flat. Okay. Am I in the neck? Yeah. So basically, if you want to take a picture of that right there, or take a mental image of that right there, this guitar has been setting in that position. I'll have to get behind the camera and try not to distort it. And this is hard to do. Sorry, guys. I think that's it. That's where it needs to be sat, the tension. Okay. And what is that? If I'm sighting down the neck, obviously looking at the Allen wrench down there, it is right at just 11 o'clock. Okay. And because if I ship this guitar without tuners, without strings, without a bridge tail and all that jazz, I'm going to be taking this tension off of this neck so it doesn't continue to bow it back. It wouldn't be major, but those are not the things I like to do. You don't need to send a guitar without the strings on it and not having tension. So if I'm tuned up to standard E, and I tuned it up the other night, about 2 nights ago, and have just only had to do minimal tuning. So I know that this neck, the tension from the strings in relation to the back tension on the neck is perfectly balanced. But if I take these strings off, then I'm going to want to relieve the tension on the truss rod. Okay, it's kind of simple. Most of us know that, but some of us don't. So anyway, keep that in mind, Art, and let me know what you want to do or how you want me to proceed. And there's a part of me in hindsight, I really wish I had spent some more time talking to Art about, hey, do you want me to just finish this guitar with pickups, electronics, switches, all that jazz? And I might have been able to put it together, but I'll digress a little bit here and shoot straight. A few years ago, I offered those things to a client, and it ended up going south really fast, and it was really bad. I got a really nasty taste in my mouth about doing business with people you don't know, and I've been doing this a long time. It was really sad because he was a super nice guy on the front end, but man, it went south pretty fast, and I was just I was just excited to get that job finished and get it behind me. So I've been kind of gun shy about finishing complete projects for guys since then. So anyway, it is what it is. But Art himself has been an incredible client and really cool, super nice guy. So Art, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So if I can help you more, let me know. I will. But if you're like me, you're probably ready to get the guitar. And also the fact that Art's in California, man, there's probably a luthier on every corner out there that is as good as I am or better, and they would probably be considerably more expensive, but nonetheless, and even Art himself might be the type guy that, oh no, I've built enough projects, I know how to set a neck up. And see, I don't know those things about the client. So anyway, let me check time. 14 minutes of a long intro, but I'm not going to erase it. This is the first video I've done. I'm not going to erase it, start over, because I don't want to risk missing something that I might have intended on sharing with Art, as well as you guys. So let's go back to where we were at video 8, I believe was the last video. Didn't have any frets in it. The frets went in extremely well. Took about 7 hours to do the fret job because each individual fret had to be machined to fit within each slot, because obviously if you're building a traditional guitar, to give you an idea, it took me 45 minutes to do the frets on this guitar, and if I had had that other one, it would have taken 46 minutes. Okay, so only because you're running it all the way out to the edge, And then I've got these special Stuart McDonald clippers where I just go clip, 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 and I just shave it, cut it flush at the edge. And then now that's not finished. It still requires a ton of sanding because right now these frets are just 90 degrees. They're straight up and down with the side. But so so that's a very simple fret job, and all the more reason if you're building your first guitar, don't dare do binding. It'll be a nightmare because it'll drive you crazy. I've done a ton of custom binding, and this is pretty much the creme de la creme as far as if you can do this type binding, you can do anything. And that's what I meant in the last video. I had to make certain that this radius, whatever the radius of the fretboard is, that it continued along the top edge of the binding. And as I had mentioned, obviously the binding is eventually going to get rolled. It's going to get rolled in, but I didn't lose any of the main width right here. But it definitely it took off about a 0.5 millimeter on the top thickness as it rolled in. Okay, and that created that phenomenal, just phenomenal jazz neck. This is basically a thin jazz neck, is what this boils down to. And well, I'm not going to play it because I'll start. First off, if you try to play them on these little goofy $100, $200 phone cameras, they sound like they're on a wah pedal. They sound really bad. But I will possibly try to do some chord work at the end of the video, like some jazzy stuff, just to hear the resonance of the guitar. And I completely forgot to mention, and I'll get back to the frets here in a second. What does this guitar sound like? As soon as I strung it up, immediately, the clarity is, and I'm not BSing. This is really true. Now, it sounded and played just as good as the last guitar I built, because I've built enough of these to know exactly what it is I'm trying to achieve. It sounds incredible and it plays incredible, but it doesn't sound like that. It does not sound like what that guitar over there will sound like because it has a maple fretboard. That's almost what's Oblivion rosewood fretboard. And I've done ebony fretboards, but what does this guitar sound like? Right straight down the middle. The first thing I thought of was it's like a little punchy bear. It's like just this little, it's got punch that is unbelievable. It almost has that Eddie Van Halen thing going, because obviously he played the maple fretboard. But keep in mind, this is a Honduran mahogany neck. And not only is it Honduran mahogany, it's quarter sawn. So what is this neck? This is and I'm not just saying this to sound, impressive. It's a master level neck. Quarter sawn Honduran mahogany with a quarter sawn maple neck. That's a very, very clear note. And this is probably one of the most, well, a lot of my jazz guitars were perfectly balanced all down the fretboard, but every individual note, wherever the note is on the fretboard, is crystal clear. It's perfectly articulate. There are no wolf notes, like all of a sudden you'll go into one note and it just howls much louder than the rest. It's very balanced. It's got a beautiful sound. I was playing some real soft, sweet, warm, jazzy chordal stuff, well, this morning as well as the other night. And then I was playing some hardcore, just punchy, like punk rock, where you just dig into it, just hit it really hard and just chug along. Very balanced guitar. So I think he's going to be really happy with it. And I'm going to try to, let me get that out. I'm going to try to possibly, I can't remember what is the best looking picture, but I'll hold that steady. That might be like the screenshot. Sorry guys, this video is really intended just for the client to see the guitar come together. But maybe it'll be inspiration for you guys, to build your own sapphire blue shark fin rock and roll punchy bear. So if you want to nickname it Punchy Bear Art, that's all right. No royalty required. It really is. It's got an awesome punch. And the cool thing about the tone of the body, I like using the poplar because the poplar has a tendency to be really warm and resonant. We're going to get back to the frets in a second, I swear. But the poplar has a really nice, it's a very neutral wood. And a lot of research claims that the very first guitar that Eddie Van Halen built, where he was at the, I guess at the Kramer plant shop, was he picked up a second or a reject poplar body, and he just bolted a maple neck on it, and then the rest was history. So when you do that maple poplar combination, you get a real complex, warm growl and bite if you need it, with the snap of the maple neck, and then this one with Honda and mahogany behind it. So great sounding guitar. So the last thing where I had mentioned, the fret install is extremely complex, and you have to notch each fret end a little bit. And I took a picture of this, Art, and I'll send you this, where I had already fretted up to about this point right here, and these frets were not installed. And I took a picture of the neck coming together, the fretboard coming together, and one of the frets laying over on its side, so that you could see it's like a little T, or it's like a little half T, and it hangs over each side. I don't do nibs. That's very amateurish, and we all know who does nibs, but I don't. That's a cheap way out, and just don't do nibs. Nibs would be if you allow the binding to protrude higher, and then you shape the binding around the fret. That's really poor standards, and it's not the way I learned to do it from like the Robert Benedettos of the world. Okay, so turned out nice. And right now, I haven't even leveled or polished the frets yet. I just installed them and verified them, and I got one or two that are a little bit. There's a little variation right here, and there's a little bit of buzz. But I've been playing it for 2 days and haven't even leveled or polished the frets yet. so what does that tell you? When I spend about 45 minutes doing the leveling and the polishing, it's going to be even better than what it is right now. Okay. All right. So fret work is all done by hand. I don't use presses or anything like that. I don't have time to show it, but I've got this sweet little piece of maple block that I engineered a long time ago that is the perfect radius. It'll be slightly under a 12-inch radius, and I use that maple block to set them rather than hammering on each individual fret. I'll talk about this just briefly. Obviously, as you're putting each individual fret in first, you're making certain that your ends are in, and then I wear a leather glove, like a heavy-duty leather glove in my right hand, because I'm working with files a lot, and otherwise you'll screw up your hand. So I don't have a glove on this hand, but I have a glove on this hand. But when I have the fret up there, I simply put my body weight into it with my right thumb, and I press the fret in a little bit, just to make certain that it's lining up with where it needs to be. And then I do 1 or 2 blows with my this is very important, because if you guys have never done fret work, you need to know this. Don't dare bang on your neck out here without any support under it. Wherever you're doing the fret work, that is bull hide leather. That's probably close to 3/16 of an inch thick. If you can find it, that's awesome. I put that just atop a piece of poplar, and then wherever I'm doing fret work, this is on the table, and therefore when I'm doing my fret work with my little block of maple, I hit it once and it's kind of a thud. Hit it twice, it starts ringing a little bit. I hit it a third time, and you can hear the solidity of the fret settling into the neck. That's when you stop. Okay, don't keep hammering and banging, because what you'll do, you'll bang it down into the wood a little bit, and you'll create a low fret, or you'll create inconsistency. So as soon as you hear it go thud thud ding, maybe hit it once more gently, and then stop. The frets are in. Okay, so just practice with it if you're building your own guitar, and you'll realize that, wow, this is fretwork is not difficult at all. The main thing about doing fretwork is just getting over the stress of fear, or the fear of having never done it. Again, something like that. See where it's just hanging over, and these have not been finished. So very simply, put in. All right. Now, what do I need to talk about? Okay, let me check the time. 25 minutes. Okay, I clarified what this job was and who it was for, and my initial intentions. And the listing was pretty clear about, and obviously I'm not doing this video trying to present something like, hey, let me do some additional work and I'll finish the guitar. I'm not trying to get work out of the job. I don't need the work. I'm so damn busy and so far behind on my other guitars. I need to get busy in the shop. But I just want to clarify that, I'll work with you however I need to, Art or the client. And I'm doing this video also so you guys will realize, if you're going to get into this to make money or some sort of livelihood on the side, communication is going to be key. If you're not really good at doing really beautiful finish work, then just shoot straight with the client. Say, hey, I can build a great guitar. I know exactly how to do all the wood, select the wood and get the certain tone, but I'm not very good at painting. Just communicate with them, and you might find that they say, oh, no worries. I live in California. There's 15 guys on my street that are phenomenal guitar painters, and, give them a discount and let them paint the thing. Rather than you stressing out about, oh God, how do I pull off this paint work and prove that I can do everything, because you don't want to try to be everything to everyone, or you'll end up being nothing to yourself, or you'll lose your mind because of the stress of trying to pull off a perfect project and stuff. And that's why I mentioned, I like building players' guitars. Even though this guitar is going to get some additional clear coat and some waxing and polishing, and you'll be able to see your reflection in it. But I like the idea of having a guitar that you won't be afraid to pull out of the case and play. And if it took a little bit of a nick or a ding or something, you don't freak out and lose your mind. I hate. I'm just, and that was a little bit crude, but I can't stand guys that buy guitars just to stick them in a case or just admire them. That's ridiculous. Okay, so let's do a little bit of mock-up with this particular project so that Art can see some options. One thing this project does include is it does include this pick guard with the screws. That pick guard fastened to the body. Okay, so let me just do this mock-up first. Which personally, I think this is beautiful. I really like this. I'm looking at. I may be off a little bit, but I'm just trying to create hell and knock it off. That'll be the fretboard. I mean the fretboard. That'll be the pick guard, and I'll go ahead and drill this 1958 specs location right there for the three-way, Art, if you want me to, or I can leave it alone, because you might want to do something different up here, or nothing at all. You might want to do your three-way switch right here and a master volume and a dummy, or a three-way switch, a master volume and a master tone. That's what I meant by, if I were to get involved in those things, I'm going to be charging for that. That's going to cost a lot. Or it's going to cost me time. It's going to cost the client money. Okay. But the project, what Art has already paid for, that's his pick guard if he wants it. If he wanted black, I don't have any black material, and I would have to order it, and I'd have to machine it. I'd have to fit it. So we'll talk about that, Art, if you prefer to go black. I personally think this looks really good though, and it's really beautiful with the maple, because see, I still haven't finished the maple yet with the real mild lacquer work, and Art elected to go with a fairly natural, fairly light, not very amber at all, which is going to be really beautiful. Okay, and then obviously it does include that as well. And if you didn't want the white, I don't have a problem including the black, because I've got a bunch of this black stuff. It takes me, well, this one's already machined, so I would include that one right there. But I wouldn't recommend that. I think the whole idea of building something with value, you need to have consistency. and therefore, and these are per historical 1950s dimensions, okay? And on the back, it does include this cover. I will sign it in gold pen if you want me to. I typically like to just sign my name and the summer or the season, the year it was made. But that's it. And see, personally, I think that's kind of cool because it would tie in with the parchment cover here and then the parchment on the back, and it would show consistency in the guitar rather than it being a patch quilt. And the only other option would be, if you didn't want to see it, then you could go with the black. That might be the. It's got dirt all over. It's real nasty. It has a clear plastic on it, but you could go with the black. But I think the parchment looks better. Okay, let's mock up some knobs. And before I forget, I'll finish the video showing you how to fit a bone nut and how to shape a bone nut and not lose your mind. Because fitting the nut, I remember when I first started building guitars when I was really building like the jazz guitars, that was about 28 years ago, not that long, it was about 24 years ago, 25. The nut work was so difficult to do, and we'll talk about doing nut work at the end of the job, so I didn't mean to digress there. Wouldn't recommend the gold. I think that's really, really out of place. Sorry, let me put that back up there. It's wrong, all day long wrong. So if you wanted to go more modern, you could go with the barrel. It's funny, I always talk about how much I love the barrel knobs, but I never installed them on anything. I don't know why, but I sure love the look of it. That's a really cool guitar right there. The reason I'm showing this is because when Art is finishing the guitar, someone, he might think that he wants the barrel knobs and then he orders them and pays, I don't know, 30, 40 bucks for them, only to get them on the guitar and realize that he doesn't like it. Now you're out 40 bucks and it's something you can't really resell. And I don't have a third black knob, but if this were my guitar, that's the knob I would be using. These are just a black top. Now you need to be going with a tall 3/4 inch CTS or equivalent pot. Don't go with the short pot because I have to show it. The thickness from the top of the guitar to the back, I leave a substantial amount of thickness there. It's about 7/16 of an inch thick. It's incredibly thick, but you'll have to go with a taller potentiometer. Okay, I'm glad I thought of that off the top of my head. So let's get this back up and finish doing our mock-up. To me, that's a very classic looking guitar. I love that. It's so simple, but it's so tasteful. And I'm sorry I don't have another one. I'm afraid if I put this up here, it's just going to throw it off. But just imagine I don't have a third one because I buy these in sets of 4, and then it seems like I'm always either doing a Flying V or an Explorer replica, and they only have 3 knobs, so I always end up with 1 knob left over. And the next time I buy a set of 4, then I will have enough for 2 guitars. So very, very nice look. The black, very traditional top hat knob. All right, let me put this back up here. And sorry if this video is a little bit chaotic, but it's kind of hard doing these videos with one hand and keep everything in place. And think about what it is you're wanting to convey in the message you're presenting. Let me check the time. 34 minutes. Okay, it's not too bad. But so I got 34 minutes of general conversation. Another thing I didn't mention, you can get these covers in a parchment. It's so cool. There's actually a guy on eBay that's selling them for like 12 or 13 bucks. So if you were to go with a parchment, you could go with a true specs, 58 specs, bell, not bell cover, 3-ply or 2-ply. It might be a 2-ply. Yeah, that's a 2-ply. Sorry. So you could put the parchment up there. Well, let's see what that would look like. But this job, well, I'll have to pull this out of the case. I want to see what a black one look. I know what a black one will look like. But and I do not have a white one or the parchment. But at least we can get an idea of what the black would look like. And I haven't installed this yet. And it's not included. That's not part of the job. But at least, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it positioned so that once I hold it up there, it's in line so that the client can see what it would look like if he went with a black one. And I'm looking at it. I probably would recommend going with the black only because it is, let me hold this pick guard so it doesn't slide. I should have put some tape on the back of that. I won't be able to lean it too much. That's what it would look like if you went with the black. I know that's not in line. But if you didn't go with black, oh, well, here we go. I guess that was meant to, let me just get this off. I just flip this over upside down. That way you can just see it in stark white, which it's not too bad, but it's one of those things that if it were my guitar project, I would buy one of both because they're the same screw layout locations. Damn, this is absolutely near impossible to do, and it's, if anything, just making a fool out of me. If you can see that, you can see it. If you can't, just pause it. Okay, it's the best I can do. All right, let me check the time. 37 minutes, 51 seconds. Let me look at the table here and see what I need to talk about. I've already talked about the anchors and the bridge and what's included and what's not included, and nothing is included. That'd have to be extra. I've already talked about the tuners, and they're not included. But I will say this: by installing these tuners, that's probably something someone would charge you about $75 to $100 to do because all that was machined and laid out and assessed so that the press-in ferrules would be put in place. And in other words, I did a lot of free work for you, Art, so it'd be real easy for you to just install your own tuners, okay, if you want. But if you want these, I'll sell you these, okay? And what else? What else? One thing that I will say when you're building your guitar, always purchase the material that you're going to go with, all the hardware, so that you can assess things like this, because that is the actual design. It's intended to be very close to that edge, but if you didn't have these tuners, then you might come in here and machine this a little bit deeper, and now you've messed up, okay? So those are the design things that have been thought through on this particular guitar. And we'll make it real easy to, change over to a traditional tuner. And the only other tuner that looks good on this guitar, as far as I'm concerned, is the Gibbs or the Grover. It's the Grover Minis. They look great and they're really tasteful. But to me, this is beautiful because it shows the authentic Explorer / Firebird design. And the tuners that you're looking at, those are specific to that guitar, those two guitars, the Firebird or the Explorer. Okay, so I wouldn't recommend, because this is such a classic footprint. Don't deviate from traditional too much. We've already deviated pretty darn far with the maple fretboard and the shark fin, but we still kept it tasteful by using the uh, the parchment binding, which would be similar, if not identical, to the 59 Les Paul. Okay, so the shark fin is really the only thing that's really kind of out of the ordinary. The rest of this guitar, other than the color, it's very much a 58 Explorer replica, and that's why I titled this series that. Even though most people would go, "Man, you're nowhere near a 58, replica with this particular project." But that's not why we build guitars. We build guitars because we want to, you know, launch out in the deep and do new things, okay, or cutting edge designs and stuff. All right, so let's talk about machining a bone nut. And how long did it take me to do the nut install? The nut install and fitment was probably about 2.5 to 4 hours. No, it's probably closer to 3.5 to 4 hours, because you have a very tall nut. They're machined the accurate Gibson thickness, and this is a 1 in 23/32 inch width nut. And what does this guitar feel like? Well, from the very first video, it's based on having a little bit wider nut, but 1 in 23/32 of an inch width would have been an option in the 50s, if not 55 all the way up to 59. They might have been 1 or 11/16 at a minimum, but this one's just a little bit wider. And by being wider, it allows you to do more rolling on the outside. If the nut gets really narrow, well, you gotta be pretty straight up and down. You gotta be fairly straight up and down right here. Well, on the whole fretboard, because if you roll in too much, you won't have any platform left over. And you can see this platform right here. You're not gonna pull off that fretboard, even if you press up. Typically, when we're bending, we're grabbing that and pulling down, or we're grabbing that, we're pushing it up. We all know that. And if we're doing double stops and stuff like that, then we're going. But this thing gives you a lot of platform to do real funky blues bending. A lot of room, and that's what I like about this fairly wide fretboard. It's just right at about 2.25, just a little bit under. But even up here, the binding is rolled a little bit. Even up here, even though it's very flat, not much, it just rolls on the top. But then once you get right here, then immediately it starts rolling on the top and the bottom. Okay, I've already covered that. I shouldn't have brought that back up, but I had to because of fitting this bone nut. Now, right now, I don't have this nut glued in place, and because of the design of this guitar, it's just barely holding in place. If you loosen up any of the top two strings, then this nut will slide down, because I don't have it glued in place. And don't glue these in unless you just have to, because your traditional symmetrical headstock is designed so that whatever tension is on the left will kind of balance out with that on the right, and it'll stay in place. Unless you had a Floyd Rose and you were doing some pretty aggressive dive bombing or something like that with a non-locking nut, then yeah, you need to put just a little bit of, if anything, just put a little bit of lacquer under it, wet lacquer, and then press it in, and then it'll kind of it will act as an adhesive, but as also a real good tone transfer. But don't epoxy these in, because the whole idea is you want to be able to remove them in the future and change them, because you might break the corner off or something like that, and have to do maintenance. In other words, it's a maintenance issue. You've got to be able to maintain those or change them, because, man, the options are, well, you guys know. Let me put this down so I don't damage it. It's amazing I haven't damaged this guitar. But see, you could go with the Tusk, which is, I think, a little bit too bright. I love doing a brass nut, but you gotta really have a good touch to play a brass nut because you can lose control of a brass nut fairly quickly. I love the bone nut because it's just a beautiful. It's a beautiful sound. It's very predictable. It's very clear. It doesn't hang up with tuning stability. It's easy to work. But how do you do it? Almost digressed there. But it's very simple, and all you need is a real flat surface or a couple of flat surfaces. And I will show you basically. Okay, this is a scraper for like doing a carving, and I like the StewMac tool there. 0.7 millimeter because you want to have enough darkness. Just clean this a little bit. Make sure there are no markings on it. What you're wanting to achieve here is you're going to be sanding every bit of this by hand, very patiently. Don't use a machine or a belt sander or any of that crap. You need to take your time working your way to the finish line on this. But I want to make certain that once I start sanding, that I'm paying attention to all four sides, and the way I do that is by laying that flat, hold that flat, make certain my mechanical pencil lead is out. Then I make probably 2 or 3 passes to make certain that the lead is kind of fit in. So there's our first mark. Turn it around. Don't roll the pencil, keep the pencil in place. Okay, got a bullet thin on that side. It jumped a little bit. Okay, good there. Connect the sides and you're ready to do your sanding. Okay, it didn't show up very well on that side. I usually wipe these with lacquer thinner to make certain there aren't any oils from the factory where they might have done machine work or something. Okay, 120 grit from where you've always been doing your sanding. As you're building other guitars, the sandpaper is going to be practically unused on the sides. Just take advantage of that. Put it up in the middle. You need to get a really nice piece of aluminum or something like that, about that height, something that you know will guarantee that it keeps you on a very true path as you're sliding back and forth, and make certain that you're staying on the flat of whatever board it is you're using. Okay, so now all you're doing is sliding back and forth. And if you want, you can turn it 180 degrees if you might be a little bit thumb heavy or something like that. But you'll spend about probably 300 to 400 passes in this location right here. Don't try to press real hard and work it off in 15 or 20 passes. Work your way to the finish line. And if for some strange reason you did get, let's say you did every bit of the cutting in just one location, and maybe you were putting too much pressure here on the treble side, then you'd see the pencil and you'd realize, whoa, okay, I'm getting a little bit low here. You might come up here with a pencil. You shouldn't have to do this because you should be able to be patient about working your way to the finish line. But if you do a little bit of Xing or something like that, then you can just monitor. And it's going to be a little bit painful on the end of your thumb, so you might want to put some tape, heavy tape. I do that a lot. Sometimes I'll just put masking tape, 5 or 6 pieces of masking tape on the end of my thumb if I'm doing something like that. and I'm just working that nut down. And before you do that machine work, you must have the tuners installed. You must have the bridge and the tail and all that stuff installed, so that in a fresh set of strings, so that you can just put this nut up there dry before you do any machine work. Because see, you might have gone with a super thick fretboard, and let's say you went with a fretboard that's over 1/4 of an inch. Well, then you might need every bit of the material down there. So always mock up the guitar to the point where you can play it, and the string height it'll probably be a millimeter too high, if not that and a half, at the nut location. But at least then you can start monitoring how much you need to go down. And in case I forget, well, basically, I think that ought to make perfect sense, that you're going to work this probably for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then you could be fairly aggressive on the first few cuts, because that's a 120 grit aluminum oxide. And I only come in just at the very end of the job with a 220 or a 400 and just clean it up a little bit. But the 120, the bone is very submissive. It gives away fairly quickly. And the target you're going for here is, okay, you don't need any tools. You don't need any measuring devices at all. Let me put this rag on the corner here so I can allow the table to hold the guitar for me. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it like that right there. And I'll do the best I can to keep this in the camera. Okay, so you put your nut in there that's too tall, string it up. That'll be the first time you've heard the guitar, and you're obviously going to realize, oh man, yeah, it's like, it's a 1/16 of an inch too high. If that's the case, don't start measuring it. That's absurd. Just go ahead and take that material down. And that's why I showed you the scraper. I noticed that by pretty much going straight to the point to where I could still see the pencil, that got me really close so that I could start assessing the string height from off the nut onto the fretboard, just by pressing here at the third on the right side of the third fret, and then coming up here and pushing down on that string and assessing how much it dropped. So I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to get this in the camera. I need a camera, man. Or one guy told me, he's like, you need a camera girl. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so what you're going to want to do, see right now, I've got this action pretty damn low. I wouldn't recommend going any lower than this. You, believe it or not, you could go a little bit lower, but if you did go lower, you'd want to put a little bit more forward relief in the neck so that it has more bow, and then you could drop the bridge down just a little bit lower, and you could get stupid low action, but it would only be good for doing, like, what's the guy's name, Stanley Jordan or Stanley Clark or whatever, that guy that plays real touch sensitive stuff. It wouldn't be any good for doing chord work, rhythm work, stuff like that. But basically, you're pressing on the right side of the third fret, and then you're assessing how much or how close it is to that first fret. Move down, right side of the third fret, and assess how much it drops right there. And if you can hear that, that's a little tone, that's a little note. What is that note? That is the speaking length from the nut to the third fret. That one's just about touching. That one's not making a sound. And if they rest, that's okay, because the way you can assess this is you can put a capo. Pick up any really nice guitar. that's finished. I mean a pro-built guitar, pro setup guitar. Put a capo at the first fret. Now come up here to this fret, which would be the fourth fret on the neck, on the fretboard, but it is the third fret above the capo, the new nut location. And assess. And see, this fretboard has not even been leveled and polished yet. So I'm already getting precision. Well, I should have told you what I just heard. It's identical to what I achieved by lowering the string height at the nut. And that's why Gretsch got away with doing the 0 fret location, because if you play a note, let's say you play a flat, or was that a, yeah, let's say A flat or A or whatever. If you play that note, and if you reach up here and touch the half step above it, you'll realize that it's just barely floating above that. They're really, really close. So, okay, so it's one of those things that I can just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, but it really just boils down to just feel, and you're just if you press on the right side of the fret, and then you come up here and you see and you can visually see the space. Okay, this is very important. Always don't just look at one and then sand off the whole nut. Verify all of them, and whichever one is the closest, let that be the one that determines how much you take off of this right here. Because, and typically what I do is, just because of the radius in the middle, I make certain that I fit the ones in the middle first, and then if anything, then I'll come back in with a slot file, and I will lower each individual slot. But there's no sense in putting this nut in here that is literally a 1/16 of an inch too tall, only to have to work yourself to death lowering these slots down, because you run the risk of screwing up the nut that was machined by a CNC machine, precision. Take advantage of that and only do a little bit of nut slot work at the end. And typically all I have to do when I fit a nut is just lower these 3 right here just a little, and then usually lower the high E just a little, but not much. And I use welding tip cleaners. If you guys know what that is, if you're into welding, the little aluminum boxes that have all the different gauges of aluminum, or welding tip cleaners, they work great. They work great. Okay. So on that note, back to rockabilly. Let's see if we can hear some chords. Let me see if I can find the camera. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. The camera's about to shut off within 1 minute. I'm sorry I didn't get to do a sound sample, and probably the camera's going to shut off within 30 seconds. But anyway, I spent probably a little bit too much time talking about that nut work. What are we, 58? Yeah, we're like 40 seconds away. My phone camera storage is pretty much maxed out, but fitting the nut is everything. And if you have a guitar that doesn't play well, start at the nut location and then go from there. And also, you can put the capo up there on the first fret and adjust the bridge height first until it starts buzzing here, and then raise it back up till it does